lot of times if we're making more and more law and regulation, we get one situation that went badly, and we already come up with a new rule for that. Pretty soon you've got thousands and thousands of rules, um, which make it very hard for people to know what those rules are, to be able to follow all those rules. And then the cost of finding out what those rules are and complying with those rules destroy businesses and are actually just hard on ordinary families. Look at the tax code. Efforts have been made to simplify the tax code, but it still gets harder and harder. This last year when I went to fill out my income taxes, in fact, it's not just last year, many years, I struggle, and I'm a lawyer, went to a very good law school, practiced law for 30 years, have studied the tax code, and still, because that's not my primary field of practice, still struggle just filling out my own taxes. Well, then how do we expect somebody who hasn't been to law school to correctly fill out their taxes and to be honest about it and to know what to do when we made it so complicated? So we really need to simplify our systems instead of costing people time and causing them great anxiety, just trying to figure out what it is that they're supposed to comply with.
Well, I think the best way to do it is to hire a lot more IRS agents. That would be the best way to handle it.
If we hire but just and that point actually brings up. All right, so we're going to have, once they eventually get hired, and actually federal government hires take a long time. I hired many civilian attorneys that worked for me and did a lot of employment law the 30 years I was in the Army, because the Army has hundreds of thousands of civilian employees. It takes time to hire a government employee, far more time than it does in the civilian world, because we have excessive regulations on how we do hiring actions. So those 80,000 aren't going to be on board immediately. I hope that some of those 80,000 won't just be enforcement, but some of them will just be answering the phone so an ordinary citizen can call up and get an answer, which has been a problem for years, where you can't get an answer from the IRS as to what you should do in a certain situation, and so people are kind of scared and they just make their best guess and send in their return and pay whatever they think they were supposed to pay. Sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong.
Well, I think the fact that even if they were hired to just answer the phones because so many people are calling, I think they go a lot on data, right? And they go a lot on reports and research. I would think that if you're sitting there and you say we have to hire this many more people just to respond to questions or whatever, it's probably too complicated.
It is too complicated. And there have been some efforts, back in Reagan's time in about 86, we had a simplification of the tax code. Under Trump, we slightly simplified the tax code, but we need to do things to simplify that and many other things. We